Good morning, everybody. Welcome along to this webinar. We've got a few of you on, which is great. And it's really pleased to see all of you here. I know you're probably all very, very busy. I know we are coping with everything that's going on and all the changes and trying to react to it as we go along. My name's David Rawle. I'm the Greek CTO for Bytes, and with me is Matt Compton, who's the head of data management for Bytes. Matt, do you want to just say hello quickly?
Yeah, hi guys. I'll introduce myself formally in a second.
Okie doke. So the purpose of the webinar today is just to discuss with you guys what's happening at Symantec or Broadcom as it now is, or you know, and the process that's being gone through and what we're seeing really as a reseller, and the processes that we're seeing and be experienced too, and just to go through with you guys what some of your options might be and what we think might or might not be a good thing to do. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Oh, going forward too many. So during the webinar, you guys are all muted, but oh, why does that keep clicking forward? There we go. Let's see if that will stay where it is now. Come on. I think there must be a time keep on that. So don't you just hate it, everybody, when things go slightly wrong? Excuse me all a second. I'm just going to understand what's going on with this. Live demos, huh? Always the most amazing things. So hopefully, if I hit present on that, that will now sort itself out, and it will not do the skip forward thing now. Oh. Right, everybody, sorry about this. Just bear with me a second, because this was not doing this just now, and I don't understand what's happening with it.
Dave, I think if you click on unclick use timings, it should turn off. Just under slideshow on the right.
Got it. Thank you, Matt. So let's see if
I think that should work.
Okay, there we go. So let's hopefully that will now stay on that screen. Yes, it is. Fantastic. Thanks, Matt. Not my template. That confused me a little bit there. So everybody, as we said, let's bit of housekeeping, get back on track. So during the webinar, you are all muted, but please do submit any questions that you have. We've got one of our other guys from the marketing team on the call in the background, and he'll be triaging your questions and bringing them to mine and Matt's attention as we go through. So we'll do the Q&A then. This webinar is being recorded, so this will be available for everybody who wants to watch it back, or if you want to share it with any colleagues. And at the end, you will get a form. So if you can give us any critiques or anything else, you know, obviously the main presenter was an idiot and couldn't work out how to work PowerPoint. You know, I'll expect that one now. It's all part of the fun. But any comments, any critiquing, please give us some feedback, because without your feedback, we can't improve these webinars for the future. Today's agenda, we're going to talk about the timeline and background of what's happening and how we've ended up in the situation that we're in now. And then from my point of view, we're just going to go through a little bit about talk about security and the focus that is so important in the world of IT security. And then we're just going to run through the different product areas that our customers typically procure from us with regards to Symantec, and just talk about the changes and how we specifically see the integrations that are happening with Symantec at Broadcom across those product areas. So Matt, without further ado, can I leave you to go through this one and just explain some of the background and how we ended up where we are?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dave. And first of all, I'll start by introducing myself. So Matt Compton, I now head up our data management team, but I joined Bytes a number of years ago, 11 in total. And at that time, I actually come on board to have a sole focus with Symantec. So I was in charge of driving the Symantec business, building the Symantec business and relationship between Bytes and the vendor. And although my role has changed and I now have a team of solution area experts underneath me, Symantec has been a core product throughout those 11 years. So I've seen lots of change, some disruption, but small disruptions that kind of lasted a shorter period of time. And once they were done, we could then move forward. The likes of the sale of Veritas, the acquisition of Bluecoat, and a number of other acquisitions that Symantec, Ulterius, and Vontu for DLP, like lots and lots of different change, and they were impactful to the business. However, it was kind of short term, 2 to 3 months. I say Veritas was the largest one where for a few months it was very, very hard to get access to kind of anything and understand what the strategy was, access to orders, quotes, anything like that. And then more recently, we've seen the acquisition of Broadcom, and this feels very, very different. And that's kind of the reason why we wanted to put today's webinar together. It's been very, very difficult for customers, assuming you are all customers of Symantec on the webinar, to get answers from the vendor, to get anything from quotes, orders, support cases, true-up licenses. It's been very difficult. So today's webinar, hopefully we can shed some light on what we know, what we've seen, and kind of what we see as the future. So I wanted to start by just putting a little bit of a timeline of what's happened over the last 6 months since that acquisition was made. So back in August last year, Broadcom agreed to purchase the Symantec enterprise business for just shy of $11 billion. What I mean by the Symantec enterprise business is that anything that they were selling into corporations. So Norton, you can still go and buy a copy of Norton from PC World, but that's nothing to do with Symantec anymore. So that's part of Norton LifeLock, completely separate to Symantec. And Dave will cover later on why that is, why that will impact their business in terms of the data that they now see. So once they kind of signed all the legals and everything, the full acquisition happened on the 4th of November, and Symantec became part of the Broadcom brand. So what do we know about Broadcom? So about a $20 billion US-based business. So significantly to the tech world, they own Brocade, and they also own CA. And quickly into December, we saw the Symantec business fully merged into CA. So any of your contacts that you had at Symantec became part of the CA brand. You were seeing CA email addresses, and all marketing and customer-facing information was all CA, which meant that you didn't see that Symantec brand anymore, or you shouldn't have seen it anymore. What this also meant was huge streamlining of the Symantec business globally. So CA are a very successful business targeting customers with mainframes. They are interested in large enterprise businesses that have huge volumes of data sitting across mainframes and other areas. Anything outside of that, they don't have a huge amount of success because that's not their focus. So bringing on board a product that is highly transactional, and yes, will sell into the large enterprise, but also sell into SMB right through the stack of customer sizes, is a very, very different approach. So anybody within the Symantec organization, as it was, that worked with what they classed as SMB accounts or mid-tier accounts or lower enterprise accounts, effectively made redundant, and you would have probably seen them popping up a lot of different security vendors. LinkedIn went a bit crazy over December with people kind of writing their messages to Symantec and saying their goodbyes. So a huge amount of churn in terms of people, which meant that there was quite light on the ground for what was left in the CA business and the few Symantec people that did get moved over. Then in January, we saw the first sale of a product. It's the only one that we've seen to date. So I can't sit here and tell you that we think that there'll be more products to be sold or not. We don't have that level of intelligence. But we do know that the MS business was sold off to Accenture in January. So read between the lines that potentially there could be more sales of maybe less profitable products, or products that maybe don't focus on that large enterprise space. And then we've seen the extension of support. And I put this for the second time because the timeline is only so big on the screen and I can't fit it in enough. But when the business acquisition happened in November, there was a massive lack of data that was merged between the two companies, huge gaps. And also we've now moved to a CA world where they're not used to those massive volumes of transactions, and they found it extremely difficult to manage the amount of quote requests, renewal requests, and orders that have come through. So in December, we saw them announce the extension of support, and again in January, and then we recently had another announcement. So I've got a person in my team that's dedicated to helping our customers through this, and I've been joking for him the whole time because he's been pulling his hair out towards the end of each month thinking that our customer base is going to be unsupported on key security technologies. But because they're not be able to do it, the only way that they could was just continue to extend the support. So you would have potentially had products that have been due for renewal since November that you may have had a quote, but if you place an order, you've probably not seen a certificate because they've not been able to book it. They've just extended that and extended that and extended that. Most recently, they've made a different announcement, which actually sees a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. They've realised that because of the lack of data that they've got, because of the volume that they're unable to manage, any support renewal that you have after the acquisition in November, running up until April, will kind of be shelved. And what will happen is you will receive a quote for a new 12-month subscription license. So your support effectively would have been free for the period of time that you've had since it was due after November, December, January. It will run up until the end of April for all products, apart from Symantec Endpoint Protection, that will run until the end of May. So you can expect quotes to start coming through Bytes for any purchases that were made for us that were previously renewals. You will get a new 12-month subscription quote. And we're starting to see them now, but officially from the 6th of April, the new systems will allow us to get the visibility of that. So from that week onwards, you should start getting those quotes. If you have licenses from Symantec that you didn't through Bytes, we obviously don't have visibility of that. So all you'll need to do is just get in touch and let us know, and we'll be able to provide you quotes, which will be new 12-month subscription licenses. And just to Dave, can you move me on a slide, please? And then just to summarise what we know and what the future means. So CA focus on large enterprise customers. If you are not, what we now think is the top 350 global accounts, and that's based on revenue. That has changed a few times, so it might change again. At the moment, it's top 350. You will not have any direct touch access to any form of account management that you previously had. You'll be managed remotely, probably out of Dublin or Prague. We know that there have been data migration gaps, and that's kind of where we are now and moving to this new 12-month license subscription. And we know that Broadcom or CA have just not been able to manage the huge volume of quotes because it's not what their business has been based on previous to the Symantec acquisition. We know the support has been extended, but we do know that you will be supported up until the end of May for SEP or April for any other product, and we can now move to this subscription model. And that is me for now, Dave. I think that kind of summarises where we are with Symantec, giving you as much information as we have. I'll pass over to Dave, and I'll probably pop back in at the end.
Thank you very much, Matt. So, yeah, for me, just a quick introduction to myself as well, for those of you that don't know me. My name's David Rawle. As I said, I'm the group CTO for Bytes here in the UK, and I came from the security side of the business. I came from security partnerships, and we in our own right did not sell a significant amount of McAfee, because we left that to the software services side of the business that Matt works for. But, you know, obviously as a security reseller, you know, I have an interest in this stuff, and you know, it's very much been a question of keeping an eye on the market and what's going on. And I think really the first key point to say is that you know, it brings Matt and I absolutely no pleasure to be talking about the problems that we've been having as a business with Symantec and the potential knock-ons to yourselves as customers. You know, as Matt's already said, he came into Bytes 11 years ago, and it was his task to build Symantec up. So the fact that we're even sat here talking about, you know, these issues is, you know, absolutely devastating from his point of view. So, you know, we don't want to be doing this. But that being said, you know, we have a duty of care to our customers to explain to them what's going on, and to give our opinions on it. And really, the first thing that I think for me I want to cover off is the loss of focus on the Symantec business. As it was. I think that is self-evident in what Matt's already explained, that Broadcom have not focused on this. You know, they've handed over the money in some form, and then they've gone, why did we do that? What are we trying to do? How are we going to achieve this? And the end result has been carnage at the back end, and loss of focus and loss of momentum specifically as well in a company. It's very, very hard to get back, and that's why we've seen these repeated extensions of the support periods. It's why we're seeing products just be canned, and I'll go through that in a minute, because you know you end up so far behind the curve that you don't really know how to get back ahead of it without just binning certain stuff, and that feels very much like where we are. So as I said, security is fast-paced at the quietest of times. You know, spring is always seems to be when we start to see new threats and stuff like that going on. But obviously, in the world at the moment that we live in, you know, to say security is fast-paced is the understatement. I mean, we're having to respond to threats for our customers almost every day. And you combine that with this lack of focus that's seeing, as I said, whole product sets just be canned and no new features coming, and lumping that into the full enterprise product set that some businesses just don't need, or they have already multiple products that cover different areas. And really, you know, none of us could foresee what was going to happen, but now really couldn't be the worst time for this lack of focus. That being said, I completely understand that the last thing any of you want to hear at the moment is you should be changing your endpoint solution. I mean, for a lot of us, we can't even touch our endpoint estates at the moment. They are wholly remote in a way they weren't before. So I'm certainly not here saying you must change your endpoint solution, because frankly, I think you'd all stone me to death if I said that. What we're trying to do here is just show you what's going on and explain what some of the potential impacts further down the line might be. So first things first, let's talk about endpoint a little bit. I mean, is it the last line of defense or is it the first line of defense? It depends what's going on. I mean, I think in a normal world, if you have an office-based estate, it's the last line of defense. For a lot of businesses, you know, if I'd been saying this 3 months ago, for some businesses, it's the first line of defense, because, you know, ultimately those devices are remote and are at the coalface. Now, obviously, in a lot of instances, it is the first line of defense. It is the entry point to your network. And for a lot of businesses, that's quite uncomfortable. And with the sell-off or the non-purchase of the consumer brand of Norton, Symantec have lost one of the things that, frankly, in my humble opinion, kept them up to speed with the latest generation of product, despite the fact that maybe their technology wasn't quite up to speed. Now, as I've said here, they've lost the canary in the cage. By having the Norton product and having the Norton deployment out there in the consumer space, they had a pilot light of what was going on. They had an advanced view of what end users were doing with personal devices, and that really is the Wild West. And they were picking up threat intel and zero-day out there that they could apply to the enterprise product. And to me, that really made up for some of the less obvious areas that they were lagging behind their competition. They've lost that now. And although hopefully we're not seeing any impact of that at the moment, I've been given some intel, which I don't have anything official, but I will share in a second, which suggests that might not be the case. We're not just talking about laptops here. We're talking about desktop and server estates. We're talking about mobile devices. You know, Norton had a mobile product. Symantec had a mobile product. You know, and all of these are being split. And there's a lot of different product set here with a lot of different areas. And as I've got here, if you're on cloud or SBE, you now have to transition to SBS. You have to move off the product you had, and you have to transition before, Matt, is it November? I think they have to do the transition this year, I've been told.
Yes.
So before November, if you're on SEP Cloud or SBE, you have to make a decision to change, which is annoying to say the least. Symantec solution is not cloud native. It's not built from the ground up on cloud, and most of the key vendors that we are seeing really come forward in this area now are cloud native. And as a result, because they're cloud native and they're built from the ground up over the last few years, we now have true single sensor, single agent deployments. And we have also EDR, endpoint detection and response, or XDR or MDR or something DR. Everybody calls it something different, but detection and response now established as actually being, for a lot of businesses, a required piece of functionality and not nice to have. So that is a key element really in terms of the way that this is starting to be put together. And going back to my point about, they've lost the canary in the cage since November, and maybe that was covering a slight lack of sophistication. I was given a frightening, really, piece of data by an incident response head in America about 3 weeks ago. There's 80% of the inbound calls for ransomware that their incident response desk, and it's an incident response desk for a vendor, but it's not what you would traditionally call an endpoint vendor. 80% of their inbound calls around ransomware are from customers running SEP, running Symantec Endpoint. So that's a fairly scary statistic. And he did say that has changed in the last 3 to 4 months. That has ramped up. So maybe that canary in the cage and that loss of that is causing them a problem from an endpoint point of view. Like I said, nobody wants to change at the moment. And if you're on any of the two products there, SEP Cloud or SBE, they're there until the end of the year. But you are going to have to change at some point if you want to remain in support. From a web and email point of view, I think it's fair to say the Symantec solution has been a robust product set. They made good acquisitions as Symantec with the Blue Coat product and the previous products before that when they bought the old Message Labs product and brought that in. And they made good choices and they brought in good products, and they've done a very, very good job. And arguably, these are the products that are the first line of defense in a traditional infrastructure. And certainly for email and anti-phishing and all that kind of stuff, which is still the single biggest threat vector that any business will face, particularly at the moment. We're getting so many phishing emails through, and something like between 50 and 60% of coronavirus websites and information websites that are out there have malware on, and those phishing links are driving people towards those websites. So this is still very much the first line of defense. But web and email encompasses so many channels now. I mean, there are so many potential channels that an email can come through. It can come through to a phone, it can come through to a tablet, it can come through to a laptop, it can come through on webmail, it can come through to a physical mail client. And on top of that, these devices are now not in the office anymore, but behind corporate firewalls. So unless you know that that link is screened and clean, the only thing that's protecting that end user, unless you're hairpinning all your traffic back through the corporate network, the only thing that's protecting that end user is the endpoint, going back to the previous comment from the last slide. So these solutions have to be good. These really are the first line of defense, and they have to be good. And the integration of those solutions and the way that they need to all work together with a minimal number of agents is absolutely key. We need true cloud solutions. We need proper cloud solutions that scale up. There are certain vendors out there, and in the early days of the Symantec Cloud solution with Blue Coat, they were certainly guilty of this, where they had a UK data center. But it meant if you had 20 offices in the UK all going back to it, they didn't actually have multiple UK data centers. They had one in the UK, one in Germany, one in France, etc. So actually, you didn't have any redundancy in the UK for your data center or for your cloud filtering. Now, they have improved that now, but it's still not the same as some of the competitive solutions that are out there that have true cloud solutions with what I refer to as kind of a hump of compute power following the sun round, provided typically in AWS, it has to be said, but in any of the cloud infrastructures that are available, and they provide all their filtering up there. And that's before we even start talking about, CASB or a cloud access security broker and DLP. Before we even start adding that in and starting to add the agents in for that and all of these channels and functionality, we already need to make sure we're best of breed for web and email. And all of these solutions tie together. So the endpoint data feeds the web and email feeds the endpoint data. And frankly, maybe the reason we're seeing an increase in ransomware attacks at the endpoint and from an incident response point of view is maybe more of those phishing links are coming through for these customers. I mean, who knows? It's very difficult to get under the hood of it. But really with CASB and DLP, how do you add it easily? Well, it shouldn't be a different solution. It's a different, it should be a single console. It should be a tick the box to turn this on. And the layers that this provides are absolutely key. We don't want to stop end users using cloud services, particularly at the moment. But if you have to have a different solution and a different console and a different agent, if I want to turn CASB on for my end user estate right now because suddenly they've gone remote, I just want to tick a box, right? I just need to just turn it on. I don't need to be deploying different stuff. And if I am deploying different stuff, I need to make it as simple as possible. I don't really feel that we have that here in the way we should. And I think if nothing else is coming from the current situation that we have, it's teaching people that, there were a lot of workarounds that we as enterprise security people and enterprise managers used to use because we could touch the estate, because people did come in and out of the office regularly. Even remote workers would typically come in once a month and we could mop up anything else from that. We've lost that now. So these solutions have to be simple. And, don't get me wrong, the DLP and CASB solutions that Symantec provided were and are very, very good. But are they fully integrated in the way they should be? And do they provide all of the single management console that some of the other solutions do? Maybe not so much. And because of that, the way they layer up and the way they build together with the web and email solutions and with the endpoint filtering solutions, the ability to say, well, I want to stop that, click apply, and it stops it on every single channel and also screens it at a web filtering and also tells the email solution not to bring it down. This functionality is available. It's just not necessarily available with what we have right now. And that's really, from a product point of view, the key points I wanted to get across. The other thing was their managed security service. Now, as Matt's already mentioned, this service has effectively been sold off. And that's a real shame, because for me, if going back a few years, this was kind of one of the big selling points for Symantec as a vendor, was that they had this, and everything that they had out there, and every endpoint, every server, every cloud log was coming back to this service, and it gave them a really unique view. Well, that's been sold, so it's not integrated anymore. And reading between the lines, what the company that have bought it have pretty much bought, which is Accenture, is they bought the customer database. They haven't necessarily bought the access to all the back-end agents and all the back-end technology in the long term. So you're gonna see a drop-off with that in terms of the quality of it. I'm sure they will work to bring it back up again, but in the interim, again, we've got this slightly difficult interim solution and interim place that we're in. And we at Bytes, we're seeing more and more demand for managed security. And that was before the recent changes. We were seeing really big demand for this. Customers they want to use the technology, particularly in the sort of up to 5,000 user space. They want to use the technology. They don't necessarily want to outsource the technology itself. They want to use it. They want to know what's happening. They have an interest in what's on their endpoints. They have an interest with what's on their servers. They have, quite often a small, but very interested and engaged user base that want to tinker with this stuff and play with this stuff. What they don't have time is watch every single log and watch every single thing that's going on. They want somebody to tell them if there's a problem. And as a result, the managed security element is just been growing bigger and bigger and bigger, particularly in that user space. And we're seeing massive demand for it. And I think what we've already seen is this lack of responsiveness and this inability to get quotes and sort stuff out is really impacting on the managed security space as well. So that, for me, is kind of the areas that I wanted to cover as a whistle-stop tour. I mean, like I said, we really don't want to be perceived in any way as being a company that's saying you must do this. The world is challenging right now. And it's very key to say, as Matt has said, nothing changes really between now and November. We have mechanisms for sorting this stuff out for you. You're going to have licenses. You've got products in support until the end of the year. And we're not stressing to anybody they have to hurry to look at this stuff. But what we are saying is that as you know, there is disruption at the moment, and as there is potentially for you as an end user a transition to be made regardless, if you do want to look at any of the other options, we're more than happy to work with you and engage on that. And I think that's really the message we want to get across, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, the products that you've got are still going to be supported. We now can see a future where we can actually get access to the orders and post April and May, make sure that those licenses are maintained and you have access to technical support when required. So it's not move away, it's be mindful that there has been a huge disruption within the Symantec business. I say, I've been working with Symantec for 11 years. It's probably the least confident I've ever been in the technology, and that airs concern with me moving forward. So yeah, I can close on that. So there is now, if you've got any questions that you want to ask, as Dave said at the start, it is muted, but on the right hand side there is a questions box. If you pop your questions in the questions panel, and then if we've got any through, then Michael will kindly read them out. And it may be me or Dave that
So, Matt, I was going to say, I can see we've got one, which is to do with, I think, can you see it hopefully in the question box, to do with current assets and 12-month subscription. Hopefully you can see that. So the question is, does that mean that if we cannot renew on current assets and can only take out a 12-month subscription, what happens if we don't take out the subscription service? Does this mean we are no longer supported for signature definitions and engine updates from the end of May?
Yes, that is correct. So May, I'm assuming that you're talking about endpoint protection. So yeah, whenever your renewal was due, it's kind of, as long as it was after November, since the acquisition, that kind of is irrelevant now. You will be supported up until the end of May. After that, if you want to continue to receive updates, you will need to purchase a 12-month subscription. The 12 months will last from when you make that purchase order. It will not be backdated to your renewal date.
Cool, thank you, Matt. What about ITMS is the next question. So that's what, IT Management Suite, is that?
Yeah,
so fit into this.
IT Management Suite is Altiris product suite, patch management, asset management, client management, server management. That will be part of the April. So it's only endpoint protection that runs until the end of May. So all Altiris products will be supported until the end of April. In the same way the rest of the products, you'll receive, if you purchase that via Bytes, a quote for a subscription license. Again, it will last for 12 months when you purchase it. If you're looking to move away from the technology, then you've got until the end of May. If you wanted to still receive updates, you will need to have a live subscription.
Cool, thanks, Matt. Those are the, and we've had the second, which is what do you know about the future of the endpoint management products, ITMS, etc., which we've already asked. We talked about the end of life products at the start. Yeah.
Just jump in there, Dave. So we're probably expecting that there may be further areas of the business to be sold, but we just don't have that intel at the moment. We look at CA's business and see where their focus is, and based on that, there's probably a few that we can assume may not be part of the CA business in the next months, years, whenever that is. But we just don't have that intel, so we can't provide anything like that at this stage.
Okay, cool. And are they pushing and developing CASB products? We've had as a question. Who knows what's happening behind the scenes in terms of pushing and developing? I don't know if you know anything about the back end, Matt, that I don't, but certainly I, from an independent security point of view, have not necessarily been seeing Symantec as a CASB leader in the market space currently. But Matt, have you got any comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, development and product releases we haven't seen at all. So I would say that there's probably a bit of a gap in it. However, I would say that DLP has kind of been their flagship, Symantec's flagship product for the last few years. If they they would try to get DLP into a customer because it kind of fits in the sticky glue that brings everything together. And that was their key story. So DLP obviously being relevant for those huge mammoth companies, I don't see DLP moving away, but that's only me guessing. CASB sits as part of that DLP suite, so I can see it staying as part of the Symantec stack. But in terms of development, we haven't seen any product releases or anything like that since the acquisition.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly one thing I would say for me is that CASB should not be rocket science. The ability to kind of tick a box. I mean, I think it's fair enough that most of the vendors would consider it to be a licensing SKU, but if the product is deployed and laid out correctly, you know, CASB is a tick box. You know, the ability to see everything that's going on and be able to act on it from both a shadow IT and, you know, a genuine business IT. You know, to be able to say to all your endpoints and just turn it on and go, right, I'm happy with people using OneDrive, but not Dropbox or Box or Google Drive, should not be a challenging thing to deploy. So certainly with some of the alternative products that we as a group work with, it isn't challenging and it is just there as functionality. And that can be hybrid, on-prem or cloud. There's a lot of vendors that applies to. Those are the only questions we've got at the moment. I mean, Matt, is there anything else you want to just finish off with and add on, or before we wrap up, or?
Just I suppose for the current customers, which I'm assuming most of you will be, because it's kind of why you'd be on the webinar. I've spoken about the licensing and the changes in that. If it was purchased by Bytes, we will have visibility of that, and we work with the account teams to, when we get those new quotes out, we will get them actually as soon as possible. If they haven't been purchased through Bytes, then I would either come through, tell me more at Bytes, or speak to your account manager. We'll be able to get access to those quotes as well. I do know that there is a number of kind of retailers and distributors that kind of wipe their hands with Symantec and think it's just too much painful. We're going to completely focus on displacing them with other technologies. So we're taking a very different approach. We understand that moving technology can be difficult, and there's also a lot of other things going on at the moment that potentially makes that even more difficult. So if we can help support you for the shorter term on the product that you've got and get the max out of them, that gives you a bit more of a longer run up to then maybe move to more forward thinking technologies, then that's kind of the approach that we're helping you with.
Cool, thanks, Matt. One last thing from me, you know, if you do want to chat about any individual challenges that you're having, certainly at the moment working through stuff, one of the things Bytes are doing is we have a completely non-sales open chat room running on Thursdays from 2 till 4 and on Tuesdays from 10 till 12. The emails haven't gone out about it yet, but I'll be on there. Some of our technical guys on the security side of the business in there, some of the networking and end user compute guys will be on there. Our CISO, our group CISO, Steve Marshall, will be on there. And also we're getting our own IT manager from Bytes to come into that chat room as well, just so that he can provide a little bit of real world experience. As Matt and I both know, you know, we're not without our own challenges in terms of responding to the needs of what's happening out there at the moment. So Kevin's actually going to share some of his own experience and some of his day-to-day dramas, just to give a bit of context as well. So we're going to have that available. Like I said, there will be it's not sales on there. It's designed as a bit of social interaction and the ability to ask questions and just chat about technical stuff or security stuff if you're interested on a whole variety of topics. So the emails are going out for that, but we're going to have that available for everybody on Thursdays and Tuesdays initially, and we might tailor those sessions as we go forward. So if there is anything you want to talk about or anything that's kind of fired that is in the front of your mind you want to chat with us about, please feel free to drop onto those. The Zoom link will be on the business continuity section of our website on the microsite for that. So I think we're pretty much done. There's no other questions coming in. So guys, thank you very much for your time today. I know we're all pretty snowed at the moment. I know we're all pretty back to the wall. So your attendance is really appreciated, and hopefully see you all again on another webinar. Thanks very much, Matt.
Thanks, Dave.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.